Welcome back. Hamden High School shut down schools early last week after threats surfaced, and in reopening went so far as to bring in wands to scan students as they enter to make sure they're unarmed. In New Haven, there were reports of threats at 7 schools, some so concerning classes there were dismissed. In Norwich, items that looked like guns were discovered, and there were other schools with similar issues over the past week. So what's happening and what's being done about it? Joining us to talk about what's happening in Connecticut is Connecticut's Education Commissioner, Charlene Russell-Tucker. Commissioner, thank you for being with us. So many parents have had concerns, many of them talking to teachers or administrators in their district, but you have the unique perspective of the statewide view. So we've seen these news reports, Commissioner. What's being done about it?
Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about this. And you are correct. We are concerned about the issues that are occurring. And on the education side, we are doing some very specific initiatives to support our educators, to support our students, and really to support the entire school community. So I appreciate you mentioning and asking what's education doing about it. I also want to mention that certainly under our governor's leadership, our state agencies are working closely together to address behavioral health issues in general. And specifically, we're certainly working to support our districts in making sure that every student can be in a welcoming and engaging environment and supporting the environment in which they can learn and they can thrive. It's important for Connecticut to know that we received $1.7 billion in federal emergency relief funding for schools. $1.5 billion of that goes directly out to our districts. We have prioritized. One of the priorities for funding decisions is addressing mental health needs, not only of our students, but also of our staff. And I am really pleased to report that I can say about $180 million, over $180 million is being invested in this area. It shows that our districts recognize the needs and the concerns, and we're working together on that. So that's just one area that we're working on. And every day continue to listen to our superintendents, to our teachers, to our students themselves and our families to make sure that we're supporting them.
I know you haven't been commissioner for all that long, but you've been involved in education in Connecticut for decades, Commissioner. And you talk about mental health. I saw you quoted as saying it's an all hands on deck approach is required. What is it now? I mean, you're maybe one of the top experts in this area. What are we seeing now as far as mental health, and what's different? Is it COVID? Is it something else that's happening out there that requires more intervention?
Another great question, and that you're correct. The issue of social emotional learning and mental health was one that predated the pandemic and work that I've been doing and the state's been doing together. But truly, I believe the pandemic really exacerbates the issues, the social isolation, the fact that over the past 2 years, we've not had what we call normal schooling that occurs. We had students that were out doing remote learning and all of that. So putting it all together, the interactions, I think students are just struggling, I think, with this particular trauma in communities, in families. And so we're needing to make sure you're correct, as I've said, it all hands on deck to make sure the supports are needed and that the supports are in place. And Eric, schools cannot do this alone, which is why we're talking about all our other sectors need to be a part of the solution. Our students need our support, our families need our support, our communities need to be a part of the solution. And yes, it's everybody recognizing their own space in this so that we can all work together to accomplish the task of supporting our students during this time.
As we introduced you, Commissioner, we talked about how in Hamden they were wanding students on the way in the door to make sure that there were no weapons. They obviously were doing that to make those who were in class feel more comfortable about being there and feel more secure being in those classrooms. But obviously that sends a message as well. If a parent from Hamden called you and got you on the phone and said, Commissioner, what's the answer here? Is it more security? What is it? What would you just tell that parent who sees their child going in there and, getting checked with a wand on the way through the door and just hates it?
Right. And again, understanding the concerns that families have, which is so important. And really, when we talk about, let's talk to the school districts and find out what it is that they're doing. I know, as you may know, as families may know, that schools must have school safety and security plans. Those plans must be developed with the support of the community, right? The school resource officers, if they're there, need to be a part of that. Law enforcement need to be a part of those solutions. And so they're all working together to develop plans to make sure that they can assess the risks, and really put in the interventions necessary to ensure safety. So I would really say, let's work closely with our districts. Let's understand what they're working on, what they're doing. I know Hamden, I watched their board meeting, right? And I hope families see that together they're all working to make sure that they have the right solutions in place. Underlying that, the social, emotional, and mental health of students, working with behavioral health providers in the community, and families do have a role. If the student needs help and support, making sure that they can reach out to the resources necessary to provide those supports for the students. Some of our students are really hurting right now. How do we support them? So families having access to resources to make sure that our students can be supported, really important. And if they need help, reaching out to those inner schools or counselors or school social workers so the resources can be provided. So they're not alone in this, and we're all there from the district to the state to support them.
We only have about a minute left, Commissioner. I just want to ask you this. We talked about it a few weeks ago, a shortage of substitute teachers. I know some districts are struggling with a shortage of staff altogether. Is that part of this, that we need to have qualified, good people in those schools? And what's the department do about that?
So we're working very hard to make sure that we remove barriers, and we're addressing some flexibilities to make sure that we have the staff in the classroom. We recognize that they're also going through their own stresses, right? And everything that's happening around them. So we also have to make sure that even the mental health support is not just for the students, but also for the adults or teachers or staff in buildings that support them. And we're working another all hands on deck to make sure that we have the necessary support staff in the buildings to be there with our kids as well.
And I know a lot of superintendents are concerned about that just as much as they're concerned about security. I'm sure a lot of parents here in Connecticut heard you talking this morning, Commissioner, and maybe took a little bit of information from what you said and maybe feel a little bit better sending their kids to school tomorrow. Thank you very much for being with us. Charlene Russell Tucker, the Commissioner of Education here in Connecticut. Thanks for joining us here on CT 21.
Thank you very much, Eric. Be well.
Thank you. You too. Next in our Sunday Spotlight, an inspiring young man on a mission. We're hearing all about Oliver's Pajama Project. We'll have that for you when we come back.